easy. Everybody, welcome to Marketeers Clubhouse. I'm Jamie Calon. Today, I've got two people in. Producer Brad Ralph, who was episode 1 of Marketeers Clubhouse, is joining us today as a host. So welcome, Brad. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, thanks.
And we've been discovering and searching through the music world. And for people that can go back to episode 1, Brad started a company years ago called iStock Photo with a bunch of partners. And in doing that, he ended up working at Getty Images. And at Getty Images, he met our guest today. And our guest today is Vince Bannon. Vince, absolute pleasure. You're coming from California. We're in the freezing cold in Canada. So that's why I'm wearing a giant fuzzy sweater. And Brad's wearing a sweater too. We got heaters on everywhere. Nice to see you. And thanks for joining.
Oh, it's great to be here. Absolutely.
Awesome. You have an incredible background, and I've dug into the music world a little bit, just trying to understand. It's such an abstract model from a business standpoint, because you're dealing with humans and the production of what they do as a product. It's the arts, and dealing in the arts is difficult. And you not only deal in those arts, but you were also working at Getty during the time Brad was there as, I think, a senior VP of entertainment division for Getty Images, which is the world's largest aggregation company for photography. So you were working on multiple tiers of artists, which is a unique thing.
Well, I'll be absolutely honest with you. I actually came in through a technology company, a UK based company that was actually pretty cool. It was called ImageNet, and what it had was the ability to deliver all the marketing and promotion material of all the major studios in the world in 17 different languages. It had the ability to deliver music to radio stations, deliver music videos to outlets, right? And the marketing materials. And it was actually pretty ahead of its time. And what's interesting is Getty bought it actually for its technology more than its business. And when I came in, I just thought, okay, I got to check and I'm going to leave. And we had, and Brad could probably double down on this. We had a really creative and amazing co-founder CEO named Jonathan Klein. And Jonathan really convinced me to stay on the basis that we were going to go into entertainment. We were going to go into music. And at that time, I left the labels a couple of years before, because the labels themselves really didn't understand who their end user was, who their consumer was, right? And at that point, they could have bought Napster very early on. They would have had their own streaming service at that point, right? And they were still convinced that it had to be physical product. And the other thing that the labels...
Can I back you up one second?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you dropped a bit of this on us yesterday. No, not a problem. But just for the people, so that there's a catch up. You were in the music industry at labels before you were in this tech company, before you ended up at Getty. Yes. So you were at Sony, is that correct?
I was at Sony. Well, you're gonna. I should actually give you details on. I actually was at a content company right after Sony. I got picked up to start a label and film company for the retailer Best Buy. And Best Buy at that point, this is in 2001, was convinced that the labels and the studios would actually go to a streaming model, and they didn't want to be left out of it, because at the point that they were building this company, and they were in the 90s, they were the largest seller of music in the world. And a lot of people thought that it was a loss leader for Best Buy, but because of their market share, they were able to negotiate unbelievable deals to get CDs and music for a lot cheaper. And so, literally, it was to go in there, and it was really an interesting thing. And I learned. I'll say this to you: it was actually a great experience. It lasted a year, and when they really saw that the labels weren't going to, and the studios weren't going to go from physical, they actually just quietly shut the company down or changed its direction. And before that, I was at Sony Music. I was brought into Sony Music because in my marketplace, we were breaking artists without radio. And it was at that time that the alternative scene, Lollapalooza was happening, right? And the alternative radio stations were just starting to happen, right? And we were doing incredible numbers because I was before that a concert promoter, and uh, we were doing incredible numbers with artists that weren't receiving any airplay. And it was this whole fanzine alternative world out there, and the clubs themselves that was out breaking new artists more than radio was.
I love it. So we just did a classic movie reverse timeline of your career. So pulling it into perspective for everybody, you were involved with the club scene, and if I'm correct, you were out of Lower Ontario, so right above Detroit. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I was only involved in the club scene in the city of Detroit.
Okay.
I'm from. I was born in Toronto, so yes, I am a recovering Canadian. I was raised in Windsor, Ontario. I did a year at a Catholic boarding school in London, Ontario,
Mm.
and my teenage playground was the city of Detroit, and I was actually in awe of the city of Detroit, even in the sense that you know it, it fell apart so badly in you know the from '67 from the riots and such, but it was still just an unbelievable music city. We had an amazing AM radio station called CKLW, where the program director, a woman in the '60s, was programming some of the best music you could ever hear. I had an unbelievable mother that loved the Beatles and loved contemporary music, and my dad, he liked you know, the Sinatras, the Goulets, all that kind of like male singer, and they also, I remember fondly my parents having all the major movie soundtracks as well,
Hmm.
right? And I loved movies at that point, right? The old Sean Connery, James Bond flicks and such, right? But one of the things I'll never forget, the first movie that I ever went and snuck into it twice was the Beatles' "Hard Day's Night." Sorry, I have two dogs that are being out of their mind here. Um,
No problem.
so, um, and that, I mean, the Beatles were just such a I was a child, such an enormous phenomenon. You loved them. The movie, Richard Lester did a great job with Hard Day's Night, black and white, the fake Paul McCartney dad and such, right? And I kind of, to be totally honest with you, I matured with how the Beatles sound, went, from the whole big British invasion, the Who, the Kinks, all these great artists. And then we were blessed, and I mean really blessed, that we had Motown,
Hmm.
existing right, across the river from us, right? So we had unbelievable soul music, right? Unbelievable, British music, right? And at the same time, growing up, and I know I haven't told you about this in any of our previous conversations, but in my high schools in Windsor, Ontario, Bob Seger played my high school.
Hmm.
My older brother took me to Herman High that had a dance featuring Iggy and the Stooges that lasted 20 minutes, and it was like me living The Exorcist, right? It was the scariest thing I ever seen in my life, right? And I might have been 13 years old at the time. Alice Cooper played the same high school. We had like some of the bands that came out of Detroit were literally became some of the greatest players in like Lou Reed's band, like a band called Frost. The guitar player from there actually played most of the stuff on Rock and Roll Animal. He was Bob Ezrin's go-to guitar player, so he played on a lot of Alice Cooper, Peter Gabriel, all these different records, right? And at the same time, coming from Toronto, there was a band called Mandela that had the rhythm section that would end up being the rhythm section for Lou Reed for Rock and Roll Animal because of Bob Ezrin. And at the same time, down the street at the St. Clair Community College, Rush was playing any current Led Zeppelin album that was out at that time. So, to be raised in an environment like that was unbelievable. And I had an older brother that loved music. He took me to Detroit's Rock and Roll Festival, and the headliner was the MC5, and who opened for him was the original Allman Brothers.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so
there's no getting away from music if that's your cradle. Is just not going to get away from it. P.S. I love the dog wrestling match that's going on in the background.
Yeah,
I
I'm sorry about that.
Laughing.
Yeah, I think because I mentioned Iggy and "I Want to Be Your Dog" is probably their favorite song. So, and I consider Iggy Jim Osterberg a good friend. Not somebody I talk to every day, but every time I see him, he just surprises me. The fact that obviously he's healthy and he's alive and he's still playing and he puts great bands together, and it's just I've worked with him. I've produced probably about 20 shows of his. It's been amazing. Yeah. Hey,
so
stop it. Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah.
You're growing up in Detroit. You end up managing clubs there.
Yeah.
Back in your youth.
What happened was I actually was in bands, and what we were looking for always, the problem was all the clubs in Detroit at that time mostly had cover bands, right? And playing whatever the big AO. We had multiple big rock stations, Wheels, Riff, WABX, all playing. But interesting, like someone would actually play Roxy Music. I remember one was playing which I thought was genius, Kraftwerk, right? And and then when they went to like that kind of AOR format, it was just Foreigner all the time, and REO Speedwagon, and through like getting imports, and here's the great thing about being in Canada was we would get like, even as a child, I'd get Beatles records before they'd come out in Detroit. And so we started getting, the 45s of the Damned, the Sex Pistols. And it was interesting. Somebody recently on a hike I was on, and I don't always look like this, but he goes, "You look like Bob Weir," right? And I had to explain to him that, growing up in the Detroit area, we only listened to the MC5 and the Stooges, right? So that wasn't that whole lovey-dovey polka music. So my point being is, when I got to, I got to see the Stooges multiple times. I saw the shows that became Metallic KO, which to me was the greatest version of the Stooges with James Williamson. It's interesting. The Stooges not only invented punk rock, but then when Raw Power comes along, they invented metal. And to me, Raw Power is my favorite Iggy record. It literally, the songwriting is just unbelievable lyrically, to have lines like, I'm a man eating cheetah with a handful of napalm, are just like genius, So we started putting bands together really on the basis of what was going on out of the UK. And the biggest story that I felt that punk rock taught us was that you could do it, right? You didn't have to have, a 48 track, state of the art studio to start, recording, or you didn't have to be the greatest player in the world. And the big challenge was to find venues. And the funniest thing happened to me as uh, Don who was known as Donnie Fagenson back then, tried to cash in on the whole punk rock thing. And he built this kind of funny band called the Traders, right? And he had a couple other bands, and he did one night at this venue that was probably owned by a Jewish gangster, and I'm not making this up. But the venue was a big gay club at one time, and what happened is a better gay club opened right beside it. And so after Don did his review there, I went and approached the owner about doing shows there all the time. And I went with another friend of mine, Andy Peabody, and we started putting local bands, and it became the CBGBs of Detroit. And it was in a very cool area, 6 Mile in Hamilton, Woodward area. But it was Palmer Park, which was the big gay area in Detroit. And my staff were drag queens, and the bartenders were as well. But a lot of them were ex-Vietnam vets that were in the same troop, and they would literally, hang on one sec. Bo! Stop it. Sorry. Honey,
I love dogs.
You know what? You know what he does? He does this to get treats, right? Because he knows I'm on a call. And what he does is like, he'll eat too many treats, right? And then I have to be up all night with your diarrhea. No.
Transform your trade marketing with Regulator, where trade marketing precision meets sales tool performance. Regulator ensures every marketing dollar is spent wisely, keeps your team aligned with defined user governance. Whether you're managing local campaigns or global initiatives, Regulator keeps your marketing efforts streamlined and effective in the real world. Give us 15 minutes to show you how we will save you time and money. Go to brandregulator.com.
What happened was I got a call while I was doing all the local bands, right? And there was a great local band scene. Some were the remnants of the Stooges and the MC5. Actually, Rob Tyner put together like almost a straight ahead rock version with really good musicians of a new MC5 that a lot of the people thought was like not a cool thing to do. Fred Sonic Smith put together a band called Sonic's Rendezvous, and Ron Ashton put together a band called Destroy All Monsters with a brilliant lead singer named Niagara, right? And then there was a lot of other bands like the Mutants, right? 27, Ramrods, all these other bands that I could continue to book. But then I got a call from a guy who ran a little label that was part of Mercury Records when Mercury Records was actually out of Chicago. The guy's, now remember this name, the guy's name was Cliff Bernstein. And he had these two bands. One was from Cleveland called Per Ubu, and one was from Minnesota called the Suicide Commandos, right? And so I played them. We didn't do much business or whatever, but they were great. I mean, Per Ubu, unbelievable, right? And then I get a call from this Southern man at a Southern agency, and he goes, Vince, I got this band, and he only had one single out called The Police. And his brother was the drummer in the band, right? And they were, touring with just Kim Turner as a sound man and roadie and everything else in a station wagon, staying at totally, the most, hotels that you could rent for 15 minutes, if you know what I mean. It was, that's what started me actually becoming a promoter. Now, 10,000 people will tell you they were at that show in Detroit when only 40 people were really there, right? And my best story out of that was Andy Summers, the guitar player, and I are sitting at the bar having a beer before they're going on, or they're setting up, whatever. And he goes, Vince, did you advertise in the black area of town? And I said to Andy, that's all that Detroit is. I said, but I have to ask you, why are you asking me specifically? And he goes, we play reggae music, right? And I had to explain to him at that time only white college kids were into reggae in America. But I said if you were paying funk like George Clinton, you could be doing stadiums, right? So what happened is Ian and I started a relationship, and all these, from Joan Jett, to XTC, to Ultravox. I mean, I can go on and on and on. The Dead Boys, you name it, played this club. And it was essentially the CBGBs of Detroit. And then, eventually moved to bigger buildings. We got more buildings, right? And we became successful as promoters. And we started partnering with the bigger promoters to, carry on with the shows and such. And for me to expand our business, I ended up moving out to California because I was dealing with all the agents there, and I was getting a lot of competition in Detroit because Detroit was as far as a live business center place was. It was on the same parallel as doing the same business as a city much greater than its size, like Chicago. And people just loved going out in Detroit. And what's interesting is at that same time, right, in the very early days, and it's the coolest thing ever, was there was an urban station, right, WJLB, and it had this, like, they should make a movie on this guy. He would come on at midnight, and his name was the Electrifying Mojo. And he's the guy that really broke Prince and a lot of other artists. But he would play Kraftwerk, right? And Kraftwerk, he just banged the hell out of it. And what happened is these wonderful guys, they're kind of known as the Belleville Three, Kevin Saunderson, Derek May, Juan Atkins, and this is in the mid '80s. Really invented techno, and Kevin he put together like what you would call a group, but it was actually he got a girl that worked I think the jewelry counter at Marshall Fields to sing on the tracks, and called it Inner City, and it actually knocked David Bowie out of the #1 slot in the UK. These guys became superstars globally while they were just great DJs in Detroit. So we had a lot of cool things going on. And as I said, we started, doing bigger and bigger things. We brought New Order in first before they had an agent on July 4th, 1984, because Blue Monday was such a huge track. I flew the Beastie Boys in when half the set was punk rock with Kate from Luscious Jackson on drums. And Rick Rubin was the DJ at that point, right? And they had a hit in Detroit with their indie single called Cookie Puss. So we were way ahead of our time there. We were doing a lot of creative things, and we were doing this without any radio support, and mostly with club DJs spinning like actual, songs like from the Beastie Boys and things like that. And it was, that the first year Lollapalooza was sold out. We started doing tours with, I was early with 9 Inch Nails. The Chili Peppers actually made their record in Detroit with George Clinton. And that's a whole other story, right? But so we were becoming really, really successful promoters. And at a point, Sony came after me because we were so successful and brought me in to not like kind of like show how we could be strategic and break artists by touring and other ways than just simply airplay.
So a lot of people, younger people specifically, don't understand the music business because it's so broken, right? Well, broken's the wrong word. It's not the same. So back in that time period, you would have labels. The labels would send out A&R people to find new bands, correct?
Yes.
Is that a fairly accurate
Yeah.
thing? they would find new bands, and then they would bring those bands to you to start setting up what logical tours would be. Is that a fair representation of
You know, was
like the basics?
the actual issue was it, and this was like, I would say, labels really didn't know who their consumer was, and I would say that, I would identify that not for 100%. There was some really, brilliant A&R people, right? But for a lot of times, they would like look at something and go, I can put this on the radio, right? And actually, even when I was at the labels in the 90s, the most powerful people at a record company were former promotion people. So, like a Donnie Ienner, the chairman of Columbia Records, right? All these guys were guys that knew how to put records on the radio, right? And that was the biggest thing of how he would break an artist, right? You get a lot of airplay, and the artist would obviously people would want to see it, and that was, and a lot of these artists too were tried and true at that point as far as being great live acts, because they played their local scene forever and ever and ever, and would branch out and do bigger things. But the thing was trying to have a hit. And I know in the 90s it really changed, and we started breaking artists like Rage Against the Machine really broke overseas. And the interesting thing was Rage, because they're so revolutionary, or almost like somewhat communist, right? That France really embraced them, right? So we started having artists not only break domestically but break globally. And
Hmm.
I would point to uh, the United Kingdom as probably the best thing. They are an export business. They've always been, right, and they always were ahead as far as like realizing that they had to break artists outside of the just the UK and Europe.
But they got like it's such a perfect incubator over there because they're ravenous with music. And their radio is super, even BBC, it's super progressive. They want to cover all genres. There doesn't seem to be like weird limits on what any given station plays. Um, that to me, that makes perfect sense. It's like they're just built for it. Like that country's built to
Well,
export music.
it's a bunch of things. They treat music like a national sport. Um, a lot of people. It's funny. I was on with one of my colleagues in the UK yesterday on a long call, and I was actually in the UK for Brexit. And what nobody talks about, and not even the Brits talk about this, it was the first day of Glastonbury, and
Hmm.
if any of you, and I'm saying this to your audience, or anybody who's into music, there is a Mecca, and it's called Glastonbury. And it
Mm-hmm.
is seriously, even with the crap weather or whatever, it's just unbelievably well run. That you go to their media center, and there's, I think, 8 networks that are either broadcasting it live visually and on radio. And you'll love this being Canadians, right? Um, the time I went, I was at Getty Images, and we were working on an exclusive with Michael Jackson. And you know what? He didn't show up, right? Sorry, I'm laughing. It's sad, but uh, uh, so I had nothing to do. I was trying to organize this whole thing with Michael and AG and at the O2 Dome for his successful run. I actually was at his press conference at the O2 Dome, the famous one where he was really drunk, and I was there because they were opening a museum called the British Music Experience that was featuring a lot of Getty content, and I helped put it together with a great British promoter, Harvey Goldsmith. And Michael was doing his press conference there. And what was interesting was Michael's career was so buried in the United States, right? Because of the whole, child sexual molestation things. And it was like already the second one has already happened at that point, cases and such. That that and I'll tell you, from working at Sony, we sold at that point all our like greatest hits and all the Jackson stuff everywhere in the world except the United States. But anyways, going back to why I ended up at Glastonbury, I was friends at that time with, and I still am friends when I see them, the wonderful Canadian band Metric. And so they were really sweet. They're going, well, if you have nothing to do, go to Glastonbury with us, right? And it was seriously one of the greatest experiences I ever had. And I ran into Spinal Tap there. I ran into friends. A friend of mine was managing Jason Mraz, Bill Silva at that time. But the little band Metric, from the second they set foot on at Glastonbury, they were doing media, right? And so going back to the Brexit thing, how many kids stayed home, like say similar to maybe the election here in 2016 when everybody thought Hillary was a shoo-in, right? Just didn't bother voting, right? For because I know the kids, loved the idea of being part of Europe because they could go to school in Milan, get a job in Barcelona, not worry about passports, and they use the race card and all the usual crap to screw the UK over with Brexit. But my point is that's the UK treats music like a national sport, and I would say this to you: in the next few years, they're going to dominate the new music scene because of the fact that they have brilliant independents. I think the fact that Oasis is coming back together, and I think that will do well here. Even the tour is going to do well, but also inspiration-wise, right? Of people putting bands back together, right? And it always seems like the UK leads, right? And I'll give you for instance, was we had all the kind of bands coming out of the end of the 80s, and this little British band came along that their first album to me is one of the greatest records of that time period, the Stone Roses. And the problem was the Stone Roses were signed to a crap label in America, so they didn't happen. Yeah, and they had Stone a shitty Roses, manager too.
They're on my that first album they released is on my top 10 albums. It's unreal. They are amazing. So first off, anybody who is even interested in Glastonbury, just Google Coldplay Michael J. Fox and look at the clip of them at that. It was this year. And if you don't cry, you're a heartless monster, because it was beautiful. And it shows like the way the cinematography of how they filmed it's insane. It's like a flippin' ocean of people. There's how many? Couple 100,000 people, 100,000 people. It's
it's probably like over 250,000, and then there's millions watching it at home, right? And
it's wild. I'm sorry, and you said something which flew by, but I just want to ask a follow-up question. Did they run? Was Glastonbury running the day of the Brexit vote?
Yes.
Holy shit! That is one of the most secretly contrived things I've ever spotted. That's insane.
In all fairness, the stupidity of Dave Cameron, he didn't want Brexit to pass, right? And he put it up as a referendum, right? And like he was anti-Brexit, right? But he felt that he had to do it in that same sort of sense that the Republicans had to run Trump, right? A very populist thing. And some of the racism and stupidity that I heard the days after, it really was like one of the reasons that I'm less than obliged to get into a black taxi anymore in London is because some of the racism I heard. Like one guy was pointing at East Indian people saying we're going to get rid of this lot. And I go, what part of Europe are they from? Right. And another blamed the EU for Uber, right? So now I'm more than happy to dial up a Uber and have Mohammed in his wonderful Mercedes C-Class and give me a nice cold water and not try to screw me on the way that he's going because he's using the right directions.
Amazing. So you've had this insane career and you're embedded in music now. And this is leading towards, I've got a bunch of questions about your project that you're working on now. So you end up at Getty. So you're going through this, and I believe at times you've been intertwined with different tech companies, and helping guide. You sort of go from Sony to Best Buy. You end up at Getty. I'm sure you've touched many other tech companies, and you bumped into Sean Parker at events, and you've talked about Facebook in the early days and all these different things. You've been in this nexus of creativity that is all spawned out of that world. When you were at Getty, running entertainment, was it an experience? And you're not there now, you're doing your own projects. Was it an experience that was hard to get the authentic photography you wanted? Were you wallowing in red carpet crap? Did you have the freedom to do what you wanted and
Yeah,
get what
I
you
actually
needed?
did. I had an unbelievable mentor there, with Jonathan Klein. And actually, even the COO was great. They kind of didn't put a rope around me and said, go out and do stuff, right? And the great thing was, um, I was so bummed out at the labels, uh, um, and their stance on their fear of technology, right? Um, Many of us, we got kind of pushed out, suggested to the powers to be. I'll never forget this, saying, "Hey, we should buy Napster." And the head of physical distribution, at Sony, I'll never forget this. He said, "You can't say that. Tower might go out of business, right?" Um, and I really like, when I was bitter when I left Sony, because it was a great gig. And the other thing too is, labels, and I'll say this too: tech companies are definitely like that now with AI and all that's going on now, and investors, right? But they're lemmings, right? And when I left Sony, we were in business with that pervert who had all the boys bands, right? Perlman, right? And we had all these kind of knockoffs of, Backstreet Boys and all this kind of, of Britney, you name it, right? And the thing is, the marketplace can only take X number of artists, right? It's like when everybody started signing a multitude of grunge bands that weren't even that grungy, right? Like Candlebox and blah blah blah, right? I don't want to name names and all that too much, but they do that so badly, right? And we were having success with Corn, right? We were, the bigger bands were taking their times making records. It was, we had Audio Slave, but we had to share it with Interscope. But the hip hop world was massive, right? Def Jam dominated at that point. But the sad thing was, we decided to go into this pop space that is crazy expensive, right? And I remember that we really didn't make money on things like Jennifer Lopez because of how expensive it was to make those records, produce the videos, and do all those promotions. So, and the other thing was, it wasn't art anymore, right?
Mm.
And the I manifest things without really thinking about it. And my manifest back then is, I did want to go into tech. I wanted to understand it a lot more, right? And uh, uh, a one couple of wonderful people that were in my life. Uh, One is a guy who runs this unbelievable company that was, he was the first guy to bring Massive Attack into America, and the company was called Giant Step. And the guy that was leading, there's two guys, Jonathan Rudnick and then Morris Bernstein, great guy. Um, they suggested to this Scottish Israeli wonderful man, Richard Cohen, to bring me into ImageNet because of my relationship with all the artists and labels, to do this technology of delivering all their materials over the internet, right? And it was really like a wonderful thing for me. And what was interesting was, I had to fly to London to meet with the powers to be of the company, but I had to meet with their VCs that were all American expats. And it was funny. They asked me one question, and you Canadians will love this question, is they asked me if I knew Michael Rapino, who was running, it might have even not been called Live Nation then. It might have been still Clear Channel, and he was running the UK. And I actually knew Michael from when he was at Labatt's, right? Because he was really early on this idea of doing brands with music, right? And that's really how he got his leg into the live music business. But I knew Michael, right? I just knew him, like, not that I knew him well or anything, but they asked me if I knew Michael Rapino. And at Getty, what I loved about Getty is Jonathan was pretty amazing at doing things that were different. And Brad can attest to this. Was that and understand this, the if you want to say anything unbelievable about iStock, was they were not only the first company to use crowdsourcing for content, but crowdsourcing as an element of making money, right? And it was what Jonathan said that was utter genius to me. Was he said that if anybody's going to cannibalize our company, it's going to be me, right? Like, it's going to be us doing it, right?
Yeah.
And Jonathan, then let us buy two of the biggest music image archives, right? I did deals with major promoters on getting us better and more advantageous or complete coverage of, like, the early days of Coachella, right? Like, our Amy Winehouse stuff that we did at Getty was before she had any sort of real visibility in the United States. She was then with her, the boyfriend husband that she, they say that she might have, like, killed herself because of what happened to them and whatever, right? But we have these intimate pictures of them backstage, and she was playing just a tent there, right? And as I said, yeah, I did meet Sean Parker at 2004 Coachella, and he introduced me. I knew him from, I knew of him from Napster, right? But he literally, he told me about the Facebook, that it was called then, and he was only in colleges. But a good friend of mine at that time, and I know he was a struggling manager then, and he picked up this new band that was from Montreal called Arcade Fire, and Sean went on to tell me how Arcade Fire were going to be a big band when they were playing just the smaller stage. And I was kind of like, how do you know, right? And he was going, I run this thing called the Facebook. And because he was sued by every major label at 19, he was trying to figure out what Facebook's could do at that point, because music was so important to his audience, right? And that's why he was at Coachella, right? Was to try to figure out where they could fit in music. And what's interesting, I met Jack Dorsey when he started Square, and he actually put Square into Coachella. I met Eric Schmidt there, right? And at the same, so the interesting thing, it was a lot of the tech people, right? They're not really sporty guys, right? They were, coding in that at home, but had their earphones on, listening to music. They're real big music fans, right? And that's why you had so many people that wanted to figure out music. And it was interesting because, if you actually go back 20 years ago, everybody thought record, like Warner's, like, divesting themselves of one of the greatest music companies in the planet, right? First to Edgar Brofman, then Edgar got rid of it to the big Ukrainian, right? And the EMI going away, and Universal, and it was really interesting. And it was like dire straits for all the record companies until they embraced streaming, and now their pants are on fire because their catalogs are so successful.
That's super interesting. So looking back, and by the way, Brad, I'm the one who keeps muting you because I'm getting an echo. I'm muting him and he keeps clicking it off, and I'm muting him again. So looking at this insane explosion of rock and roll coming out of 60s, 70s, culminating into some horrific stuff in a weird 70s, 80 period, but kind of still lots of great music, everything coming, and then tech coming up along with it once we start getting into the 90s. You see music struggling and the whole industry struggling a little bit, just trying to figure out what to do with Napsters, what to do with these different things. We're back on the companies. You can now monetize music again correctly, whether it's good for all the different people, whether it's good for the artists, and the companies distributing the music. I'm unaware of that. That's a question I've got coming up. Is it good for all parties? But we're getting way more. Do you see, like, I feel that there, and I'm going to air quotes, good music as music I want to hear, real musicians, not necessarily DJ. And there's value to all sorts of techno and all that stuff. It's just not my bag. I want Iggy and the Stooges. I want, Nirvana-esque style, not grunge, but I want real musicians playing real stuff again. It feels like that's all coming back in a way. And the industry is on a rebound to be able to distribute a wider variety, not just jam the same pop crap or same hip hop or country, whatever it is, down our throats, but it's getting broader. We're getting better access. Do you see that coming?
Yeah, first of all and foremost, I'll say this to you, right? Is I love hip hop, right? I've seen some of the like, I gotta say this: when Dr. Dre played Coachella, it was the equivalent of seeing Pink Floyd.
For
And
sure.
what's interesting is a friend of mine was actually a Canadian, good Canadian, Bill Bell. I think he tours now with Tom Cochrane, but he was Jason Mraz's musical director, right? And he told me this, that Dre would be in the rehearsal space beside them for 12 hours, right? Of just putting that show together. And I heard that Dre spent more money, because I think he was paid $2 million a show for 2 weekends at Coachella, than he was, and he paid more. He actually spent more money than it was that he got paid on, right? And it
On the
was
production of the show.
production of the show, with the Tupac hologram, and having Eminem and 50 Cent and Snoop and everybody, Cube, all part of it, right? And it was unbelievable. I worked with Outkast as a 13-piece live band. I saw the Fugees in a basement club in Soho, and I'll never forget this, because I won't name names on this, but say a certain president of a label named Columbia. I go and because the manager goes, nobody cares about this band. It's before they had, the massive record, with Killing Me Softly and that, right? And
the Score.
Yeah, the Score. And Lauryn Hill, all three of them were massive, great stars, great front people. And I go to him and I go, this band's going to be huge. And he goes, yeah, but they're Haitians, right? I'll never forget that. Like, they're not Jamaicans. They're not cool, right? And that's the thing. And the other thing is, you're seeing bands now take out, like, some of the more cutting edge, Right Said Fred, all these kind of other different DJs, right? And it's, to me, like, or some, DJs now are playing more live and stuff like that, right? And so I always would get that. I'd be on a plane and a guy go, oh, I love these bands, like Pearl Jam, but I fucking hate, hip hop or whatever, right? And the thing is, you give all these bands and artists a chance. Like, one of the best combinations, and I have to say this, I love the band Primal Scream. And the fact that Primal Scream used basically a hacienda DJ to make one Screamadelic, right? One of the greatest records I think is out there, right? And it's that combination, right? You don't know where it's going to come from. And it's, I had one of the greatest things I got to do at Getty, and I mean this, and thank you, Getty, was I got to travel really extensively. And I saw this music scene in Mumbai that was insane, right? And that whole different Indian sort of time count and putting it into dance music and how you don't know where your next biggest bands are going to come out of. I got invited to the equivalent of the Chinese Grammys that was done in Taiwan, right? And the only English that was spoken on stage was they hired Randy Jackson to be a host, and he just said hi. But he saw me sitting in the front row, and I worked with Randy, and he goes, "Hey, what's up, dog?" Right? The rest was in Mandarin, but I had a Shanghai banker beside me, who was an American expat, and I said, "These people are beautiful. They sing really well and perform really well. Would they ever think of crossing over?" And he said this to me. He goes, "Vince, how many cities in China have 1 million plus people?" And the number
Right.
was 250, right?
That's
And
a
he
good
goes,
tour.
"Yeah." They go, "There are stadium acts there. Why would they want to go anywhere else?" Right? And, obviously now India's taken over in population. So we don't know where it's coming from. But to say something really cool too that you hit on, Jamie, about 12 years ago, I had to fly from Singapore to Narita, and I get in a cab. It was an early flight, and it was like 5 in the morning, and the cab driver in Singapore is blasting 70s rock in this car, right? And I'm kind of laughing because I just can't believe I'm in this cab listening to this stuff, right? And he sees me chuckling, and he turns around and he goes, "Do you know who this is?" I go, "Fuck yeah, it's Foghat, Fool for the City." And he had a burned CD with all these classic rock songs on it, right? And he goes, "Can you tell me who the artists are?" And I said, "If you get me to Changi at a certain time, we'll go through this CD and I'll tell you who the artists are." And he was so happy that
Oh,
like
that's
he was
amazing.
just discovering this rock music, right? So that's happening globally, right? And the funny thing is, remember how everybody thought the country where all the big new Asian artists are going to come out of, it was Japan, and it's South fucking Korea.
Right. Of
They've
course it is.
wiped everybody out, right?
Yeah.
Hype and all those guys. And I mean, I met girls from Montreal that were friends with my ex-wife that were deadheading one of the Korean bands, and they were in LA, right? I mean, I just thought it was just hilarious, like how you don't know where it's going to come from, and the when we had all the great Australian bands, these bands like In Excess had a fucking superstar with Michael Hutchins, right?
Superstar. Yeah.
AC/DC, they're still performing, right? I mean, it's just unbelievable, right? Uh, uh, and they have multiple genres of music over there, and Crowded House from New Zealand. I mean, yeah. So you just don't know, But I mean, obviously, the UK has been on quite a ride right now with a lot of great new music, right? And I
Tons.
think it's inevitable that it's going to come here. It's interesting, Jamie. You mentioned the BBC. I actually have this wonderful app, and I dropped literally satellite radio or anything in my car. I can listen to any streaming service, but I almost exclusively listen to the BBC Six music. And they actually have
Mm.
Iggy as a DJ, but they play so much great new music in different genres. And the other thing is they're live for Glastonbury, but the lead up to Glastonbury just makes you want to hop on a plane and go.
Yeah, I assume the app you're talking about is TuneIn, correct?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, not like shameless plug for TuneIn. I use it all the time. It's a great app. Everybody go and get it and give it a shot. TuneIn people have done a great job aggregating places where music comes from. It's deadly. I'm a like ravenous consumer of performing arts, dance, uh, like ballet, modern music of literally any genre. I am like very in to go and see all the time live. You have so you've been exposed to this your entire life, and I am really just discovering the ability to go to shows and see all these things and do this, and I'm in my 50s, but I can't get enough of it. With COVID being done, with the world opening, with people touring like crazy, with the technology hitting this right spot, but with media being kind of at an all-time shitty low in North America, not Europe, but like we're just talking here. Like, in my opinion, I see so much schlocky garbage, not anything that's super authentic. And then Brad and I were digging through your new project, which you can find at SoCo. And it is a format that celebrates amazing, passionate photography and stories from really like more intimate, accessible clubs. How do you, like, one, I'm infatuated with the photography is super good. And you have, I believe, tell me if I'm wrong, but you've got contributors that are going out and crowdsourcing amazing photography and stories that get posted into this. I feel that there's a huge hole in the marketplace for this again. This is what used to exist in the real world. But nowadays we just get like, there's not many people that I see, unless you're directly on each band's social media, you're not getting exposure to this. What's your goal with SoCo? How did you guys, like, where are you going with this? Because
Well,
I find it intriguing.
I'm, as I said, I'm coming through a rough period because of the pandemic, and also a personal thing. I'm going through a divorce and such. But my whole plan with SoCo was, and it is still, it's actually to make it really a site where you can find your favorite artist, right? You can find new information on artists, right? I want to go more platform wide. I'd like to be doing a lot more podcasts and such, which we aren't doing yet. That would feature, say, the one of the funniest nights I ever had in my life was in London with the photographer who shot the first two Oasis album covers and Verve's Urban Hymns album cover and the stories
Right.
behind it, right? And then there's something beautiful, and I know I have a wonderful photographer on this platform with Brad. Is there's so much more deepness in just a photograph than a video, right? And I one of my focus groups are my two sons, right? And I so many times they actually wouldn't watch a video. Uh, they would they would listen to it on YouTube, right? And I wanted something that, and I hope to eventually get there if it takes a little while longer, right? Or if I have to, I'm in the midst of raising more money on it and such, that I want it to be a place where a joyous place of all music, right? And I don't want it to be. It's interesting, right? Like, so I wanted to be in tech. I got to be in tech. I love content. I was the guy taking the tunnel bus to Detroit as a child to get my new Cream magazine that came out of Birmingham, Michigan, right? I loved Rolling Stone, right? I loved all those, great photographers, the Annie Leibowitzes and such of, Bob Gruen's, all that, wonderful art that was music, right? And it's interesting is now with all these big music, like music is so valuable now, like really valuable. When you have the biggest hedge funds investing in music, right, and private equity companies, right, from Carlyle to KKR to Blackstone are all investing in music copyrights. Well, it's interesting. Look at the deals now. They're also asking for right of likeness, right? And the thing is, and Brad, we could go into this for a while, but you cannot AI editorial images of like us, right? Unless you have permission of right of likeness. So the people that actually control the estates or their own face, right? So they know that they have to be visual. And there was a great movie that actually a lovely man who I worked with, who I consider a friend, did on uh, the great album art company called Hypnosis, and they did everything from T Rex's Electric Warrior cover to all the major Pink Floyd ones. Their biggest album, Dark Side of the Moon, right? And did Led Zeppelin, right? Houses of the Holy, and the best is they did. I got to remember the title of the Led Zeppelin record. But when Jimmy Page got the bill, he said, we could put this in a brown paper bag and it would sell just as well. So then they added a brown paper bag to the album cover, but it's called Squaring the Circle. And it's so beautiful. And these guys were just so out of their mind and so creative, right? And to me, this day, you can capture these great, and the stories behind the photographs, of these great shows. And there's one that I love, that is of Iggy, maybe in 1968 or 69, where he's literally walking on people's hands at the Atlanta Rock and Roll Festival. I believe it is on Getty. It might be a Lenny Sinclair photo or something like that, but it's just unbelievable, the photo, right? And then you sit there and you look at these things and you go, oh my God, what was going on at that point, right? Where a video really doesn't capture, that essence, right? And of that moment, right? And that's the great thing about the art of photography, right? And there's always been such a visual part of modern music, right? The way that the artists look. I mean, probably Brian Epstein really captured that with what he did with the Beatles, because they kind of all looked like Elvis at one point, and then he made them into these, interesting mod kind of good looking guys that he could sell to the rest of the world, right? So it's one of the things that I wanted to do. At a point, I'd love to see it where it captured, what went on music in a daily sort of part. I'd love to be, worldwide. It's based in the UK right now. It's a UK based company, right? The pandemic really hurt us, both in fundraising and obviously availability of artists. But the coolest thing is you can go on the site, and it's really kind of special to me personally. Was we did a project for this manager, and he was managing this female artist named Laura Marling, and it worked out really well. We shot her at this thing called the Union Chapel. She was doing streamed shows, and he then asked us to do this stream show of Nick Cave from Alexandra Palace, right? And it was
Yeah.
Nick with a grand piano. And for the stream show, he actually hired the cinematographer who did The Favorite. And he was actually up for an Academy Award because of that movie. But we shot it during, the pandemic, and a great photographer, Joel Roman, shot it. And it was so beautiful that Nick used it as an album cover. And
it's gorgeous.
yeah, and to give you my history with Nick was I did one of the first birthday party shows, Nick Cave's first band in the United States, right? And he hired a well-traveled Southern road manager, and he picks them up flew, I think, right directly from the UK to Detroit, and he picks them up in a bus, and he's taking them to the gig, and Nick sees a billboard for Wild Turkey, right? And he goes, "Hey, mate, what's that?" And he goes, "It's a drink." And he goes, "Pull over." And he goes, "What do you mean pull over?" He goes, "Why don't you get me some of that?" And Nick came in with the biggest bottle of Wild Turkey with about that much, this much left, right? Like a couple of inches. And I'm going, is he going to make the show? And the show was unbelievable. So it was kind of like, wow, 40 years of working with Nick Cave, and to have an album cover on it was amazing.
Yeah, it's shocking. It's up on my screen right now. It's a beautiful photo. You can find it at so.co. Go and take a look. It's on the homepage. And if people don't know who Nick Cave is, Google Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. He's unbelievable. I believe originally out of Melbourne, or they're Australian originally, or he is.
Yeah, he's a son of a preacher too. Yeah.
There you go, son of a preacher man.
Yeah.
Experience the ultimate in brand hygiene with Regulator's Market Check AI engine. Powered by your team's in-market photos. Regulator AI insights guide both marketing and sales teams in making informed decisions and allow your trade marketing team to maximize impact and deliver sales tools with laser precision. This, combined with Regulator's gold standard toolset, you will efficiently manage custom art, fixtures, point of purchase materials, and promotions, ensuring a dynamic and responsive market presence for your brand. Give us 15 minutes to show you how we will save you time and money. Go to brandregulator.com.
So with what you're doing, I guess there's a couple things. Are you optimistic about what the future of music is going to have or going to be with the investment that is getting dumped into it now? If you're telling me that music is an all-time, is it an all-time high that's going to fuck it all up, or is it investment that's going to bring forward new acts that are going to expand what our options are right now? Where do you see that going?
There's a lot of fear of a lot of things continually in music, right? I think it's cheaper to record. I've heard people like the UK is actually putting a fee on all the major concerts to keep clubs going, right? And I think that's really pertinent and really amazing that they're doing it. And listen, I really think Michael Rapino's done a great job rolling up Live Nation, but probably Live Nation should be broken up. Just to give a lot more people access to a lot of more buildings, or different people that want to break other music as well, right? I don't think that Live Nation is that interested in the club business. I've been to some of the clubs that they've taken over, and I think they aesthetically have done a terrible job. And I hope that I think they should like cast off that division and make it so, because I know they lose money on those clubs, and give it to people that want to make money with it and develop talent. The interesting thing is this. So we've had American Idol. I actually went to Canadian Idol. That was one of the funniest experiences in my life. I was a newly hired Getty employee, and I was helping Getty out at the Toronto Film Festival. And it might have been 2004 or 2005. And I know you folks know the band Tragically Hip.
Yes, we do.
A friend of mine managed them at that way back when, named Jake Gold. And I think he's been involved with the documentary and their, post. I forget the lead singer's name. Please don't get mad at me. My baby brother, my second youngest brother, is way into the band. But anyways,
it's
Gordy. Yeah, Gordy.
There you go.
Gordo. Yeah. Sorry. But anyways, he was a judge on Canadian Idol. And it was in Toronto. And he goes, Vince, you got to come to a Canadian Idol. And I said, I'd love to. Thank you, Jake. And I go there, and they're announcing the celebrities there. And it's like the fisheries minister from New Brunswick or something, right? And then they Jake takes me to the green room, and they have a bucket of ice with like beers, like Molson Canadian and Labatt's in it, right? And I just thought, this is so Canadian, right? It was, but going back to the Idol and say the voice things and stuff like that, how many artists have really made it from there? Really, seriously,
very few.
And I mean, they won awards. They were considered the best. Jennifer Hudson's considered a great actor. I get it, right? but Kelly Clarkson's a live TV host, right? I mean, where are all these great bands? Where are all these great
The,
artists? And it's really
yeah,
this thing of how.
only one modern right now is Morgan Wallen, the country guy. He just won I think a bunch of stuff at the CMAs. But
Okay,
as one, literally,
yeah,
like next to Kelly Clarkson, there's one
no, the
really.
female country star, she's done well. Carrie Underwood, is that it?
Uh, I don't. Yeah, I don't know where her origin was from, but it's very
Yeah, she's out of
possible.
Idol. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But my point being is these artists that struggle and come up through the clubs and write songs and make crazy YouTube videos and such. Like, we have an artist on the platform that you can see, and they actually were teenagers. They're all girls bands. They're of Asian and Hispanic descent, and they made an anti racism song because of the racism that happened during the pandemic against Asian people, right? Like blaming Asians and Chinese for the COVID virus, right? They're called the Linda Lindas. And they haven't really broke here that big, but they're really big in Japan and in the UK. And they're a real band.
yeah. I love that. I feel uh, as much as I love watching The Voice, because there's magic in some of the stuff that happens there that can't happen anywhere else. It's got its own thing. Does it produce stars? No chance. But is it entertaining? Heck yeah, in a bunch of different ways. But I feel that without clubs and without, like, you have to put in your 10,000 hours. You have to know all of it. You have to know how to perform. You have to know, first off, know how to play guitar or drums or bass or whatever you're going to play. If you're in from the cult, you need to know how to run that tambourine like no one's business, because that's his tool of the trade. But that guy can sing into a microphone like no one's business. I saw him about a month ago. It was unbelievable. Um, but you need to know how to do that. Then you know how to do those things and sing at the same time. Then you need to know how to entertain people while you do it. And you have to be like, you have to practice these things. It's like a long thing. Just showing up on a stage, being good at singing, you are amazing at karaoke, but you're not necessarily a rock star or a performer at that point. Not yet. Do they have possibilities? Sure, they probably could. I, I can't get enough of trying to understand the music business, understand how people are breaking through in. I really hope that a site like yours gives optics against the beauty of, like, the photography shows so much passion in it that video doesn't. It's too fast and you freeze it and it's blurry and you don't see the detail in what's happening, where in the photography you do. And bringing it back, it's really weird, Vince. It feels like like a global music zine. Do you know what I mean? Like one that you would catch, like one that would have existed in Detroit when you were there. So, it's on shitty brown newsprint and it's this like thing. It come out once a week, but it had all of where you were going, what you should see and what you do. You've got this really cool digital glossed version of that that's just waiting to explode. But I really feel like this is a perfect pair for an audiophile that's got a ton of vinyl, that's got a set of good in-ears, that's got expensive speakers. Like, it's a thing where they can go in and search and get into that level of beauty. Anyone's collecting vinyls is now officially looking through the records and the beautiful artwork that exists on, or the drawings that exist on these things. It's unreal. So do you, like, you're in the mix of all of this still, do you have great hope for music to scale to heights we haven't seen?
Well, it's interesting. I'm my latest manifest is I would like to move to the UK. And understand this. It's not. I do hate Donald Trump. I do hate Donald Trump a lot. I did vote for Kamala Harris, and I do. I do love the United States, right? But I just at this point in my life, I'd like to be back in a city where I don't have to drive anymore, right?
Mm.
That there's great music around at all times. I love the social scene in the UK, where I could walk down to a pub with my dogs and check out music, right? And I do like their parks, but I'm at this point where I just would love to be surrounded by that, and I haven't lived there. And it's if anybody wants to call me a globalist, I am. Uh, and it's not that I will, it's not I'm going to fight for this country or for any country, if you know what I mean. I'll fight for music, right? And my thing is that with so much stuff that is gone wrong with the internet, and it was really early when I just had a concept of what I wanted to do, even before I even had a name SoCo, right? I had a concept of what I wanted to do. And the way that I came up with the concept was I actually, Apple was really good to Getty, really good. And I don't know, I even told Brad this. At one point, they even wanted to build a consumer facing picture store that
Hmm.
you could license pictures similar to iTunes. And they had to shit can it because of that antitrust suit with the books. But I had a great relationship with Eddie Q. And I said to Eddie, this is before the lawsuit or anything else, I said, you got crazy money. Why don't you make iTunes really, beautiful looking with, and do a massive image licensing deal with Getty? And it was really interesting what he said to me. And this and also Daniel Eck at Spotify gave me the idea was, uh, I said, well, really, why not? And he goes, Vince, the last thing I want to do is take a phone call from a manager that thinks the picture is shitty, right? And and then what I did with Spotify is I spent time in Stockholm, which I cannot say enough nice things about Stockholm, and I mean that. It is just such a beautiful city, and the people are really sweet. And I just I'm a runner, and if there's any more place that's more fun to run when the weather's great is Stockholm. But I was at Spotify, and the issue with Getty was that a lot of our photography and our music artist photography was red carpet, right? We
Mm.
tend to stay with artists that would be more popular in a People magazine setting or in a pop sugar type website, right? That would be more Dua Lipa, Rihanna, Beyonce, Taylor Swift than we would be with Radiohead, even, right?
Right.
Uh, and I get it. Getty's a licensing juggernaut. You're not going to license Tom York photos to every beautiful website in the planet, even though you should. And I don't think they even send somebody to cover the Smile or things like that. And so that was the idea of the crowdsourcing thing, thanks to Brad and Bruce Livingston. And the idea would be, and they actually went through a lot of Swedish bands. They said, "Oh, you don't have this, you don't have this, you don't have this," right? Because obviously we're in Sweden, right? And I don't know if either of you gentlemen know this, but almost globally, including the Chinese, Taiwanese Grammy Awards that I went to, called the Golden Melody Awards. Most of those artists, the songs were co-written by the big Swedish writers like Max Martin, right? I mean, these guys dominate the pop scene globally, right? Because they know how to
Hmm.
write a fucking hit, But my point being is you know the Last Dinner Party. I mean, you got to listen to that record, right? It's beautiful. It's amazing, right? And this is what the UK is producing right now, right? And you know, one of my great things that happened to me in the last 20 years is I got close to some of the people in Daft Punk, right? And I was there in France when they won all the awards at the Grammys, right? And you know, uh, um, they put everything into making Random Access, right? And the stories behind that, they almost all got divorced, right? the whole Daft Wiki crew, right? Because of how much they put into it. And one did get divorced, right? And and I remember the pride in France of like, God, we have this international global superstar. And the sad thing is that they never toured on that record, right? That was like, and the stories behind it, that Panda Bear called them to do a remix, and they said, no, we want you to record a song, right? And like the track with Giorgio Moroder explaining how he got into it, right? It's beautiful, it's amazing, right? And the fact that they played live on that record, talking about DJs that went from around the world around the world to the beauty. I was at Coachella when Pharrell was playing the smaller stage, and I was a major artist played or just played the main stage, and Pharrell started his set with "Lose Yourself to Dance." Right, the entire audience, and I remember I was with a friend, and I was saying to him that if Daft Punk came and played Coachella, that audience would just be there for Daft Punk, for nobody else. Right? They actually can't play Coachella because they're a stadium act. Right? They would play like probably a week at SoFi if they ever got back together.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
I hold lots of hope that music accelerates. I'm super into a band at Alabama called Red Clay Strays. That
I know them. Yeah.
Yeah, they like I picked up on them just through COVID. They did a spotlight on country AF, country as fuck, and they did they did a series of songs, and it just sort of started spinning around social media, and I hooked up on it really quick. And the band was touring in the shitty little van, and they had like 6,000 followers on their Instagram. They were just this little tiny thing, and they've talked fairly publicly about it. They're one of the person that writes half of the songs they do is the person that they handed the social media over for and does the photography for the band. So there's a single person who's writing songs, but isn't necessarily playing any of it, but he is driving the social component of it. Not only are they like, I am ultra attracted to super authentic performance. It's just me. And there's nothing more authentic than this. Everyone in the band is exceedingly unique. The band is bigger than just the players, because some of them, one of the key people doesn't go on stage other than with a camera, and drives their social. And it's not pretty. It's not polished, not even close, but it's so good. It's like you're on stage with them, and it's authentic. And the videos are cool, but I love the still photography. And it's not perfect, but there's so much detail in it, and there's so much beauty in that. And I feel that that's what their success is. I've been trying to get that guy on the podcast, and I'm not gonna quit until I do, because I desperately want to talk to him about what they've done. I don't even think he understands what he's doing. He's just doing what he does, which is so authentic.
I have a great story for you, and I'm going to make it two different stories. Going back to Daft Punk, they have a third member. His name is Cedric Hervé. He's an artist. He is also a music producer. He is the one who came up with the helmets and the design and all that. He actually produced the little movie they did after they did Tron, right? And he's produced tracks for them as well, right? And I remember one time, his English is not the best, but we went to the Natural History Museum on this great like organic Hispanic art thing, and he pointed at this like statue that was really done very folk art of Jesus, and he goes, this is what they studied in school. Sorry, I'm doing a bad Clouseau. And I go, oh, theology? And he goes, no, sculpting, right? And this guy has done so many brilliant things. And one of the things he did was, this is pre the pandemic, he did a pop-up on Melrose of Daft Punk and all their gear and all their art and all these photographs of early days and all that. Daft Punk got their name because they were a band, and they played in the early 90s in London. And actually, members of Phoenix were part of the band. And the reviewer and the Enemy or Melody Maker, he actually reviewed the band and he called it Daft Punk, right? And they took the fucking name, right?
That's
and,
amazing.
and so this guy who's never on stage, doesn't write the music, but came up with all these concepts, is really a band member, right? And then my other story is I was doing a Chili Peppers date, maybe 2,000 seats in Cleveland. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. There was a guy, not tall, probably my height, really interesting goth hairstyle, but he had a leather jacket on that had the logo NIN. And I was like, there was an aura around this guy. And I had a local guy that was based in Cleveland that would help us out with the shows with ticketing and production and such. And I go, what is this? And he goes, dude, he'll be one of the biggest guys in the planet in a few years. I heard his first single, Head Like a Hole, and it's 9 Inch Nails. That's Trent Reznor. So I made a point of like trying to know more about him and meeting the guy, right? But it was just literally, you just saw him and you went like, whoa, When I did Lollapalooza in 91, Trent was number 2 on the bill, and Trent's merchandise equaled every other artist that was on that bill: Jane's Addiction, Living Colors, Susie, Ice T's band. What was it called again? The one with
Body Count.
Body Count, and the Lolla T-shirt. He equaled it. Equaled what all that merchandise. 9 Inch Nails equaled it. And I'll never forget every song the kids sung along to. They knew the lyrics already, right? That's like, that whole package you're talking about, right? And when an artist has that together, a music artist, right? There's nothing like it. And I get it, that to include somebody like that. And you've seen bands in the past, they'll include their lyricists like Procol Harum or other, their artists like Yes, right? That, hippie kind of wacky stuff.
Yeah.
Or, Lord of the Rings kind of wacky stuff. Those artists, they know the package. Brian Epstein was the fifth Beatle, right? There's a photograph, and I can't remember the photographer's name. I own it, and it's the Beatles in a Paris hotel room, and Lennon's got an acoustic guitar, and Brian Epstein's in the room, and you could just see the magic happening there, right? Magic, no matter what you say about Brian Epstein, that he was the fifth Beatle.
That's incredible. I could talk to you for days and days and days on this. In fact, I'd love to have you back at one point. This conversation rings really close-ish to one I had with a Canadian music historian. His name's Alan Cross. I sent you some of Alan's stuff.
Yeah, it was great.
And he is like, his show is unbelievable. So if anyone is very interested in very detailed music history stuff, go to Alan Cross's website. It's very worth it. We do a thing on our podcast. I used to be called the Cool Confessional because I think I'm, so people are like, oh, you got a cool job, you have this, you get to chat with all these cool people, but I'm not really a cool guy. There's tons of stuff that I do that I hide. And so I've been giving away my secrets. And the other day I got a package in the mail from something I bought on Instagram when I was drinking wine with my wife. And it's this game, How Deep Would You Go? And I got these cards, and Brad, you're going to be involved in this today. In fact, if you want to jump in here and pick cards for us, you can get to pick yours and then jump back into your little studio room there. But each one of these cards makes us deliver a truth. And some of them are really mild. They're really basic. The one on this is, what's the first thing you think people notice about you? Really simple, benign questions, but it just gives us a little bit of a little deeper look into what what we are as people. Are you interested in playing this game? That's my first question.
Well, do you know that Brian Eno brings a set of cards into the studio with him? I actually own
Really?
those cards, but obviously I don't know where they are because of my divorce. I'll try to figure that out in the next few months. But he literally would put them up, and they're really interesting cards. And so while he's doing a U2 record, right? These cards play a role in Brian's way of doing music, right?
I love it. Okay, well, if you guys trust me, Brad, you can just sit right there. Do you guys? So there's 3 categories, and we should all pick the same category. There's getting deep, which is the heavy duty one. The middle level one is confessions, and level 1 is just icebreakers, really basic stuff. You guys get to make a decision if we're going to go like light, medium, or heavy. What are we doing?
There's nothing in my life, that I would say to you that I would be embarrassed about, right?
Getting deep.
But wait, I'll say this to you though. I like the first one better because I just think I would actually reveal more, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and to say, I remember when I was at Getty Images, our head of BD at the time, Michael Tester, had these things like that about you that people just didn't know, and I would put like I was on the road with Pearl Jam. I did this with the Beastie Boys, and I taught at UCLA for 5 years, right? And the true one was actually I taught at UCLA for 5 years.
Amazing. I love it. Okay, so we're going to do this. I'm going to randomly pick cards. Brad, you're up first. So I'm just going to...
I've been quiet this whole podcast. I'm going to go first.
Okay. Just listening. So that's your card, regardless of what's on there. That's you. You get to go first. What's the first thing you think of when you say I love?
Wow.
That's a fucking deep.
Yeah.
Nice icebreaker. What's the first thing you think of when you say I love? Go.
My friends.
Whoa.
It's absolutely my friends. And I'm probably going to get, kicked in the butt when I get home from Allison, but...
Well, I was going to say, you still see Allison, yeah. I thought you would say
Allison was also my friend, but...
I also would say, I thought you were going to say your dogs, right?
I love my dogs. I do love my dogs.
Yeah.
If people know that, but people know that about me. I think, well, Vince, you know this. I mean, you're my friend. I have so much of my life that was given to me through my relationships with my friends, the things we've built together, the things we're doing together now.
Yeah.
My life revolves around my friends. All the experiences I've had have been through friendships, getting to go snowboarding in those early days with Ken Achenbach and those guys. Those were all my friends who got me into this. And then Bruce, my friend, got me into web design, which got me into iStock, which got me into the place I am now.
Yeah.
Jamie, my friend I bike with, one of my favorite things to do in the world is go mountain biking with Jamie.
Yeah.
And now we get to work together every day. So, I mean,
every day.
It's my friends.
I love it. Okay. I'm going to go next. Vince, you're going last. You're the finale. So I'm just I shuffled it a little bit. I'm just going to randomly pick this. Oof. What has life recently taught you? Okay. What has life recently taught me? To challenge my own thinking. That's what life has taught me recently. What I think needs to be, when I come up with an opinion, I need to step back from that opinion before I express it. Or if I've even expressed it, and I need to sit back and challenge it and question my reasoning for whatever it is I've come up for. Why that? And I've been doing that, Brad. I know I talked to you about this stuff more, but to me, I feel that I'm way more balanced now than I ever have been. And it's because I'm challenging my own thoughts and logic processes. That's what life has taught me. And I wish I knew that when I was younger, because I would have saved myself a lot of trouble. So that's that. Vince, you ready?
Yep. Real quick.
All right.
I want to do
Yep.
one. Can I do a commercial break real quick?
Yes.
So I just also want to let you guys know I'm working with a really cool UK company that Robbie Williams is the major investor in, and it's called Tickets for Good. And what
Oh,
it
yes.
does is it gives tickets to health workers, teachers, underprivileged kids, first responders, right? And it's really successful in the UK. I'm helping them open markets here in the US. It's that every show and sporting event has excess inventory,
Seating. Yeah.
and it makes it affordable for people who can't afford to go to shows. And it's something that I'm really passionate about. I love the idea behind this because I think one of the worst thing that's going on with all the ticketing and that is making tickets not affordable for the people it should be, and that will kill this business if we don't make concerts and clubs and sporting events, right? Not for just the privileged few, but for everybody. And I don't know if you guys
I
were at
love
that
that.
age when your parents would bring you as you were saying, Jamie, to theater, to uh, um, I'm sitting on my mom's lap, seeing great concerts, right? And my brother's taking me to shows. I think it's so important that we are social beasts and to make events affordable for everybody. So tickets for good. I'm just doing that as I love and I'm passionate about that company right now, and helping them
I,
out has been a real pleasure of mine.
I love that. And if you want to bring that here, I would love to help with that. I donate tickets through a thing that's semi-local. I think it's called Kids Up Front here in Calgary, where it's the same
We
thing.
definitely want to bring it there. I told them that
Yeah.
that I want to help break Canada as well. So you will get that call in the next day for me about
Yeah.
that, because
If there's anything I can do to help, I
yeah,
would enjoy
it's
that.
like Taylor Swift's getting involved. All these people are getting involved, and it's like I love the fact that yeah, sure. If you're crazy wealthy and you can afford the first couple of rows, they should charge you like $3,000 a ticket. Why not, right?
Yeah.
But why don't you give 5 of those seats to the people that would never have gotten them?
Well, and there's like the Kids Up Front organization in Calgary that runs this. There's just oil companies that buy blocks of seats, and then those seats go unused, and they can literally, if they don't have someone to distribute the tickets to, they can distribute it through to this organization, send a whole bunch of kids that are underprivileged to go to a Flames game or to go to an appropriate concert that works for them. And it's a really brilliant thing because it fills the seats. It creates enthusiasts. You go see someone in concert. I dare anyone who hates Nickelback, go to a Nickelback concert.
No, you know
Guarantee
what?
you, you're going to
I
leave and
think
you're going to
that's
fucking love it.
I'm going to say that it's really unfair too. Um, I, of all things, was going. There's a great diner in Toluca Lake called Patty's, and it's kind of the mainstay of you know the crews that work at the studios and such, right?
Sure.
And I was sitting at the counter, which I love to eat at the counter. And the guy beside me, he heard me talking about some concert stuff and all that. And he goes, "Who are you?" And I told him who I was and all that. Turns out he was the bass player from Nickelback. And he
Right.
couldn't have been a nicer human being, right? And the fact that they get dumped on so horrifically, right? I just love this guy. And he was the nicest guy. And it's not like I'm going to go, "Oh, your band sucks," or yada, 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 right? Hey, God bless them. They had a big hit, big record. They can still go out there and tour. Why not? Yeah.
Oh, and truthfully, I saw them not long. I saw them. They played. Calgary's got a giant rodeo festival called the Stampede, and I
I have
saw them
been.
play.
I actually went and stayed at Bruce's house, actually, my
Amazing.
first time. I love Calgary. Don't get me wrong. In fact, Calgary is literally, I would say, my favorite city in Canada now.
Yay!
More
We
than
love it.
more than Toronto, more than Montreal. Seriously.
Come back up and stay out at my ranch. I've got a nice place for you to camp, and we got this beautiful tiny home that you can hang out in, and we'll play some tennis and do some fun stuff. Good running to be had if you want to go do some running in the mountains.
Oh, if I could bring my dogs, I'll love you forever.
Yeah, you can bring your dogs. That's not a problem.
Hey,
yeah,
we're going to Calgary, kids.
I got 2 Kelpies that are really great with other dogs. Not a problem.
Yeah, same here. They're great. They're pointers. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So yeah, we like if you're listening to this and you're in the area that you can, help out with the charity. What's the name again? Sorry.
Tickets for Good.
Tickets for Good. Make sure you look it up. I did a little dive into it. It's great. It reminded me of the one that I donate stuff through Kids Up Front. I believe they're still, I haven't donated tickets in a year or two, but I believe they're still most likely up and running. It's brilliant. I think it's a great idea. And the artists love it. The venues are full, and people can get entertainment that could not afford it. And I believe to see the arts is huge. To see a sporting
remember the first
event
concert you ever went
huge.
to, and you're like, "Oh my God, live music!" Yeah,
mine was a weird one. Mine was Thomas Dolby.
That's great.
If you remember him, yeah,
of course I remember him. He's awesome.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah,
and
he blinded me with science.
Exactly, it was crazy.
Regulator simplifies the management of fixtures and displays for brands. We provide a seamless solution to allocate, order, ship, track, and manage lifecycle processes from installation to disposal. It's the all-in-one tool that ensures your brand moves smoothly in the market without any bottlenecks. Give us 15 minutes to show you how we will save you time and money. Go to brandregulator.com.
Okay, your card, my friend, is this one. Ooh. Sorry. What would you honestly rate yourself 1 out of 10 and why? That's a tricky one.
Yeah, I mean, that's there's days that I'm down and I would say I'm a 2, and then there's days that I'm up and I would say I'm an 8. And what I love the most is I'm a social beast, right? And I'm a kind of person that can make friends in a heartbeat, right? And I swear to God, we'll be best friends, and everybody's my best friend. And when I'm down, it's because I'm not seeing or talking to people. And
Right.
I think the pandemic did that so badly to us. Now, understand this, right? I actually believed in everything that they did, right? I got the vaccines. I knew about the lockdowns. You know why? Because I had people I knew died, right?
Yeah.
Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo almost died. He was on a ventilator. It's really interesting. And he doesn't talk about it a lot, but Lucian Grange, the CEO of Universal, almost died from COVID. And I knew a guy who was head of promotion. I won't name his name because the circumstances, but I opened up Facebook one day and I saw there was a memorial service for him. So I called this cynical New York friend of mine and he goes, "Fucking guy married an anti-vaxxer. He lives in New York. What do you think was going to fucking happen to him?" Right. So when I'm around people, I feel like an 8. And when I close myself off and I start thinking like, "Oh, this sucks. I'm in the middle of this. I lost my money." Right. I have 2 beautiful boys. I have a life that's going to go on. The funniest thing happened to me. I was like trying to sell one of my life insurance policies, and they made me do a physical and all this stuff. And they called me back 2 weeks later, and they go, "Well, we got good news and bad news." And I go, "Well, give me the bad news. I'm so used to bad news." And they go, "Well, we can't buy your policy." And I go, "Well, why not?" And they go, "Because you're going to live for another 30 years. So they're Deadpools, those insurance policy companies, right? They want you to have cancer, diabetes, and a heart attack at the same time,
Right.
and they can collect. So that's it. I mean, put me around people, put me into a great conversation like this. I'm an 8 to 10. When I'm by myself and I sit there in my lonely old thoughts and think, "Oh, I have it so bad," I'm a 2.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm a really strange person. I live very isolated in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains with my beautiful wife Harper and our 2 dogs. But I also spend a bunch of time on the phone with my friends when I'm out there, just in contact with people, because that's like, if I'm practicing guitar, I can't help but call a friend and be like, hey, what have you been up to? And then my practice goes to shit. But I am the same person. I love interactions with humans. So to me, that makes perfect sense. The more Brad time I get, the better I am. More time with my wife, the better I am. It just works out right.
All BS aside, Brad was a real lightning rod at Getty and iStock, and just a guy you wanted to be around, and a guy you would want to be at South by Southwest hanging out with, right?
I will attest. Let me just say this, Vince. I will attest to Vince's health. We used to go to South by and if people don't know what South by Southwest is, it's a music, art, and film and tech festival in Austin, Texas. It's about 12 days. I would go and follow Vince for the music part of this. And no shit, we circumvented on foot Austin, Texas probably 6 times in a day. And I could barely, as a cyclist, I could barely keep up to this guy. He would be at one venue, next venue, meeting this guy, this A&R guy. I could not keep up.
Huh.
Put him on a bike, you'd crush him, though. Yeah. Let's be honest.
Yeah. I tried. We did an SLT event. I think I told you about this, Jamie. We did an SLT event in Palm Springs where you spent some time, and we went up on this hike up in the hills above Palm Springs. I could not keep up with Vince. Like, he was up the side of that mountain like nobody's business.
I don't doubt it. I am a terrible runner, and I will not be doing it unless there's a basketball in my hand or a tennis racket. I don't move like that. That's not the way my body works.
I love to run cities, and Barcelona being number one to me. The best parks in the world are in London, right? They're like putting greens, and you just love it. But I actually, the Brazilian government paid for me to go to the World Cup when I was at Getty. And they had me go to great recording studios to listen to music, right? But I wanted to go running. And about 6 months before, I met these Brazilians that owned a streaming service. And they said, you know what the number one car in Sao Paulo is? And I go, no, what? They go, an armored one. And they scared the living heck out of me, right? About how violent Sao Paulo is, right? And I've had friends who've had terrible experience where they walked out of a hotel and they looked at their watch and a motorcycle guy came along and took the watch, right? So I saw this massive park that was 2 blocks from my hotel, and there was cars everywhere, right? They have the worst traffic I've ever seen in my life of any city. Like, every little residential street was packed with cars, right? So I get the courage, I get in my running gear, and I go down, and it takes 2 blocks to get to the park. And I'm like really scared. I'm running, through traffic and that to get to the park. I get in the park, and it's the most beautiful Brazilian women in the world all running. Right? I'm like, oh, this is great. So
amazing.
Yeah, you'd be surprised.
Don't be afraid of the bullets. Run towards the ladies in the park. That's the lesson of that story, kids. Thank you, Vince. It's been great to talk to you. I would love to continue this conversation. We'll do another one in a few months if you're interested.
Absolutely.
In jumping back on and talking more history. I would love to do it. And I always continue.
No, actually, I'll say this curious. To you. I don't know what you guys are doing tomorrow. I'd love to talk to you offline about a bunch of things too. Absolutely.
Yeah, we're around. It's American Thanksgiving for you, so for me and for Brad, most of our giant business is out of the U.S., and so that's kind of taken care of. We have one podcast. I think we're doing a recording tomorrow, but other than that, we're good to go. So yeah, I would absolutely.
I love this. This was great, and I'd actually like to help you amplify this. I talked to Brad about it for a second, but I love this. It was great. Fantastic.
If people are amplified, if people are interested in a fool learning how not to be a fool, it's a great show.
Yeah. I love it. It was great. Now, obviously,
I
have nothing but love for Canadians being one, and there you go. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, I appreciate it. We're just literally out here just trying to figure out. I love learning and listening to people's stories and just trying to get a grasp on how the world works in different ways. And you, my friend, have so many stories. You have lived. Whenever you're at a 2, I just want you to think, about the journey that you've gotten to there. Your life is extraordinary. People would like, your life is an unreal movie. It's an unreal movie. and that on its own is like, kudos to you. It's not a normal life. Normal lives don't look like yours. So be happy about that.
Thank you, Jamie.
So
Thank
if
you.
we're in a simulation, you got a bonus card somewhere right at the start, and you got to live where you did, and you got access to a bunch of shit, and they gave you a courage pill to go and do it. So congrats, because that's literally what I believe. You know, you had opportunity, and then you just fucking picked it up and ran with it in every direction. Like there wasn't a time. It doesn't sound like there's a ton of times where you said no. You said yes to so many things, right or wrong. Fucking A. I love it. Everybody, thank you for joining in. This was fantastic. Come back for the next episode of Marketeers Clubhouse. We'll be seeing you guys soon. Appreciate it.